Welcome everyone, so glad you're here. We're in week 3 of our series Wreck the Roof. If you haven't downloaded the booklet to follow along, make sure to go to wrecktheroof.org to download it. It'll make your experience so much better. And speaking of experiences, we've been making a lot of changes behind the scenes here online. We are making brand new Apple TV and Roku apps that should be ready in a couple of weeks that will be so much better, cleaner, and all around just a better experience. So for those of you that regularly watch on either of those devices, we're glad to have you, and we'll have an announcement on how to download those new apps when they come out. We've also updated our player here on the Crossing.tv website in an effort to bring a more robust player that's more compatible with people who have slow internet while keeping everything smooth and looking good so that nothing gets in the way of your experience here online. Anytime that we make changes, there's always going to be some bumps in the road. So bear with us if there's any hiccups as we strive to bring you the absolute best experience that we possibly can. All right, now let's get into some amazing worship before we start wrecking our roofs.
Design the tattered thread by thread. You take the broken and destroy. You rebuild. You make whole. Joy begin to rise and hope begin to light the dark. I gotta change this hope for New Year's dawn. Christ in me. This is all I have, this is all I need, this is everything. Christ in me. This is all I have, this is all I need, this is everything. Christ in me. This is all I have, this is all I need, this is everything. Christ in me. This is love undeserving. This is freedom, freedom from every sin. This is joy everlasting. This is life, life that is found. This is love undeserving. This is freedom, freedom from every sin. This is joy everlasting. This is life, life that is found in you. Oh, life that is found in you.
Well, Old Crossing Church, how are you doing this fine day? You doing good? It is so good to see you. We want to welcome all of our campuses that are joining with us. It is such a pleasure to be able to just worship and minister with you throughout this region. And we're so thankful for each and every one of you. If you're joining online, if you're inside or .tv, we are so thankful for you because you allow us to get just outside of the region, and we get to go all over the world, and we are so thankful to be able to spread that message of Jesus Christ to everyone who's willing to listen to it, and it's a life-changing message. And we've got to celebrate a couple of things. Pike County, I know you're watching Pike County. You're celebrating your 7th anniversary last week. We thank God for you. You're doing incredible work for God, and we're thankful for that. And 929 celebrating their 8th anniversary last week. God's doing great things there. And I got a text at 6:11 this morning. Hey, don't forget Keokuk is celebrating its 4th anniversary this week. So, I mean, if we launch 7 more campuses, we're going to have lots of anniversaries. And we're going to have longer baptism videos. We're going to figure out how to do this. It's going to be awesome. And I am so glad that God is working in each one of those areas and all of our other areas. We give God the glory for that. We're in a great, big spiritual journey right now. We're in a journey we're calling Wreck the Roof, and it is working. It is happening. And God is moving, and it is exciting to see what He is doing. And this weekend and the next 2 weekends and Thursday nights, we are going to be continuing in this series. And this is going to, even after the series is over, we're going to be doing this together for the next 2 years. And it's going to be exciting. And we have this booklet. It's your roadmap. It's your guide to these next weeks. All right? So I know that some of you were busy. I mean, the kid did this or that, and you had to jump in the car, and you didn't get your book. And you don't have it today. If you don't have a book, you raise your hand. There's people around you that'll get you a booklet right now. So raise your hand right now. Don't be so shy. I see you over there in Pittsfield. I see you in Pike County. Kirksville, raise your hand. Happening right now. Get your booklet because this is really going to help you through this whole process. And if you're online, listen, we're not leaving you out online. Go to wrecktheroof.org. And there's a big blue button at the bottom, center of the screen, first screen that you come up to. You press on that and you can download this on your tablet, on your smartphone, on your computer, and you can join right along with us because we want you to all be a part of what's going on. Now, I want you to be here for, you're obviously here this week. I want you to be here for the next 2 weeks as well. I don't want you to miss a single one of these. And if you happen to, because you can't avoid it, I want you to get on wrecktheroof.org and watch the last week. I'd love for you to have the continuity of every week of the Wreck the Roof series because it's a life-changing series, and I believe it's going to change us as a church. It's going to change us as individuals. I know it because it's already doing that. It's accomplishing that. And if you're not in a life group, this is a great opportunity to jump into one of those and test drive a life group. I know some of you are like, well, I just go to church. I won't do that. But here's an opportunity to step into a whole new place. And at all of our locations, there's a hub in the lobby, and they have all these options for you of joining in a life group and having an opportunity to see what that's like just through this series. And if you like it, you may want to do that. It could be life-changing for you as well. And there's lots and lots of options for you to do that. Now, if you got your book for the first time, there's one of these commitment cards in here. You don't need to be scared of this thing. It won't like bite you or anything. What I want you to do with it is this. I want you to put this in a place in your house that you walk by. And I want it to be a prayer reminder. All right? This is just an opportunity for you to pray because our number one goal in Wreck the Roof is that 100% of us say, Lord, what is it that you want me to do, and help me to walk in that. That is our number one goal. That there wouldn't be a single person that goes to the crossing, considers the crossing a church home, that would not pray that prayer regularly and allow God to speak to you so that you can hear what He wants you to do. That's what we're asking for. And I know that you can do that, so put that in one of those places. A lot of you have been praying like crazy over that card. It's causing a lot of discussions, conversations. Not all of them are easy. And that's a good thing because that's what God's doing. He's tearing away at some of those things. All right? I need to tell you about Advanced Commitment Night. That happened on Friday night, happened at the 48th Street location. It was lit up. It was nuts. It was incredible. And, not the rest of you, now that was 25% of our people. There's 75% that we're not a part of that. I want you to know that we're just starting on this journey together. And I know that some of you will bribe me. That is possible, okay? I don't know about like what happened there. What was? Give me the numbers. Give me this. Give me that. Nope, not doing it. It's going to be a tightly held secret because it's not about 25%. It's about 100%. It's about 100% of us that are doing this all together. But I will tell you this: you got a lot to be excited about because people are literally bringing the house down when it comes to wrecking the roof in their lives, and it's going to be an amazing, amazing experience. So you be praying about that and how God is going to reveal Himself through that. They've paved the road for the rest of it. Now it's time for us to get ready for that commitment weekend that's coming up 2 weeks from today and beyond that. And so I'm excited about what God's doing. But right now, I want to get into God's Word. So get out your booklet. You turn to page 40, and that's where the notes are for this weekend service. And you can follow right along there in your booklet if you have that. Have you ever had the opportunity of doing something great for God? I mean, somebody put it in front of you, and you looked at your life, and you thought about your calendar, and you thought about your priorities, and you thought about your responsibilities, and you went, no, I really don't want to do that. Maybe it wasn't just because you had a full calendar, you had a lot of other stuff to do. Maybe it was because you were just scared. You thought, well, if I do that, I could mess this up. I could look silly. I could look, ignorant. I don't want to do that. And it was uncomfortable for you. Maybe you just didn't like see yourself connecting with that, and you passed it by, right? So I wonder how many of you, like in your heart, you made up an excuse. Like you put this excuse together because you didn't want other people to feel bad of you. Like the person that asked you to do it, you didn't want them to feel like you didn't like them or you didn't like what they were doing. And so you thought that by giving this excuse, you could kind of let yourself off the hook. Is this connecting with anybody? Yeah? All right, good. Because I think it's true for all of us that we've all done that. Like you still could have done it, but you just chose not to. Now, we've been in this series now for a while, and I want us just to go back quickly and kind of look at the people, the characters in these stories, and apply those to our life, like the paralytic. Let me ask you this, did the paralytic have excuses? I mean, really, I'm paralyzed, folks. I've got tons of excuses about not getting to Jesus. How am I supposed to get to Jesus? And I don't want to put out my friends. I don't want to say, hey, would you carry me all the way to this particular place? He had a ton of excuses, but he didn't allow his excuses to define him, right? What about the 4 guys? But the 4 guys that carried him, do you think they had other things to do that day? Do you think that they didn't look forward to, man, we get this opportunity to carry this guy all this way? I mean, did they have excuses? They certainly have excuses. How about the woman in the street that had the issue of blood? Did she have excuses? She could have said, you know, I really don't want people to see what I'm dealing with spiritually as well as physically. I'm ceremonially unclean. They're going to hate me. They're going to yell at me. They're ostracized me already. I really don't want to. I don't want to get down on all fours. I'm already a sick person. I don't want to do that. I see that there's this crowd of people around Jesus. There's no way for me to penetrate that crowd to get to him. She had a ton of excuses, right? And what about the rich young ruler? How about him going, I don't really like the idea of other people seeing me in a needy way. I mean, I've got a reputation to protect. And I'm rich and I'm young and I'm in charge and I really don't need Jesus for anything. I mean, he could have told himself that, right? It would have been easy for him to make an excuse. What I see in these stories leading up to this story is that there are plenty of excuses, right? But I think the story that I'm going to share with you today tops them all. All right, and we read about it in the book of Matthew, chapter 9. It says, as Jesus went on from there, 2 blind men followed him. I just got to stop right there because that's just funny to me. I don't know about you, but when I read the Bible, I try to picture it. I try to put myself in the sandals of the people. And it cannot be an easy thing for 2 blind men to follow somebody. Now we'll just read over that. And we won't think, well, that was really hard. I think those blind guys could have said, hey, calling out. And they're not just following Jesus, they're calling out, have mercy on us, Son of David. Does Jesus answer them? No record of it. Look what Jesus does. Is this funny to anybody? When Jesus had gone indoors. Now that's just mean. 2 guys that can't see are trying to follow you when it's nearly impossible to follow you. They're yelling at you. You're paying them no attention. And then he goes inside a house. How hard is it to follow him inside of a house? The blind men came to him. Obviously, they were not dissuaded by that. And he asked them, do you believe that I'm able to do this? I think that's funny too. We've been following you, Jesus, and it's been impossible. We've been yelling at you and you've been ignoring us. You went into a house and we had to figure out how to get in this house. Duh! Well, is that just my translation? I mean, when I read it, that's what I read kind of in between the lines. And they say the obvious thing. Yes, Lord, they replied. Then he touched their eyes and said, according to your faith, we're going to come back to this word because this is a big one. In this story, it's a big word. According to your faith, will it be done to you? And their sight was restored. Wow. Jesus warned them sternly. I mean, think about Jesus doing something sternly. You have to point your finger, I want you to look at your neighbor at all of our locations and then just pretend like you're warning them sternly. Don't say anything, just point your finger at them and go, you know those eyes. Okay, stop it. You're having way too much fun with that. See to it that no one knows about. You see to it that no one knows about this. But they went out and spread the news about him all over that region. Okay, I love this story. I love this story for so many reasons, but we've promised ourselves that when we look at these stories, we take them apart, we're doing it in the context of Wreck the Roof, and we're going to ask ourselves 5 questions, right? And the first of those questions is, what was the roof? What was the roof? Well, that one is really obvious. The roof is their limitation. They have a limitation. In their case, it's blindness, right? And that is a legitimate limitation. It makes it very hard for people, in a sighted world, for an unsighted person to try to manage. And imagine that 2,000 years ago. Let's bring that one fast forward to right now. I think that there are a lot of people that have self-imposed limitations on them when it comes to their faith and their relationship with Jesus. It's like this. There's people today that think it's Jesus' responsibility to pursue us. And then once Jesus catches us, it's Jesus' responsibility to persuade us. And then after he persuades us, it's Jesus' responsibility to put up with us. Are you connecting with me anywhere? Like, we're putting it all on him. Like, you need to pursue us, you need to persuade us, and then you need to put up with us. And I know that it is true about Jesus, who said, that the Son of Man came to seek and to save that which was lost. He has done that. He has pursued us. He crossed the divides we could never cross, right? And he has compelled us with persuasive messages. So he has pursued and he has persuaded, right? And he definitely, with all his grace, he puts up with an awful lot. All that's true. But I want to zero in on one part of this story that I think is just really powerful, and that is that even though all of that is true, he still put them in a position where they had to do some moving. They had to do something, right? It wasn't like when you think of the paralytic, he didn't say, hey, first of all, maybe I should say this. Do you think that Jesus was surprised that the paralytic came to him that day? I think Jesus knew exactly that the paralytic was coming that day. I think he probably worked his message up with that in mind. I think that when Jesus was standing under the roof that they were going to wreck, he knew that they were going to wreck it before they wrecked it, and he probably moved over here. So all that stuff wouldn't hit him in the head. I think he knew exactly what was going to happen. I think he said exactly what he planned to say. I don't think he was surprised by any of that. I think that Jesus knew that the woman that was in the street was going to come and from behind him and touch him. I think he knew it. I think he knew exactly who she was and everything. Some of you go, well, she said, he looks around and he says, who touched me? Who touched me? He wasn't saying that for his benefit. He was saying it for her benefit. He was saying it for the crowd's benefit, not for his own. And I think he knew the day that the rich young ruler came to him exactly what he was going to be asked. I don't think that Jesus was surprised by any of that. I think he knew it. But what I see in each one of these stories, and in the story of the 2 blind men, is that he still let them get through a roof or deal with a barrier, a roof, right? Why did he do that? Why would he do a thing like that? Why wouldn't he just pursue and then persuade and then put up with? Because Jesus knows that all of those things that create excuses, all the limitations in our life that create excuses become our roofs. They become the barriers between us and them. Jesus will always handle the limitation, but he leaves it to us to handle the excuse. Are you hearing me? The excuse is your responsibility. The excuse is on you. The excuse is inside you. The excuse is what your heart and your mind come up with. Jesus can remove the limitation, but he's looking for you to take the excuse out of the way. So let me ask you this. What are the excuses that right now you're putting in front of having a deeper relationship with Jesus Christ? That's what Wreck the Roof is all about. It's all about removing the excuses so that he can take down the limitations that keep us from having a deeper and closer relationship with Jesus Christ. Right? And in the story of the two blind men. The blindness is the limitation. But all of those opportunities that they could have stepped away from Jesus because they could have been frustrated, those excuses, that was the roof in their life. What was wrecked? That's our second question. If the limitation was the roof, then what was wrecked? Well, what was wrecked were the excuses themselves, right? There's no doubt in my mind that blindness was a very powerful limitation in these guys' lives. Actually, it represented a lot of different limitations, and to me, that is profound too. I want you to think about this. Have these two blind men ever seen Jesus work a miracle? Why? Because they can't see. They've never seen Jesus do anything. So, these guys who are chasing Jesus and trying to follow him around are doing it not because of what they have seen, but because of what they have heard. And that is faith, right? The Bible says faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God, right? The Bible says we walk by faith and not by sight, right? So we're understanding. I want us to understand exactly what Jesus is accomplishing here, what he is participating in wrecking. Now these two blind men are wrecking their excuses, all the excuses they could have made that could have kept them from Jesus. And they were operating in faith because they'd never seen Jesus do anything. They would have had a very difficult time to get to Jesus, and we've discussed all of that, right? What do excuses do? You see, if we put an excuse between us and whatever God wants to do in our life, we'll stay exactly the same. If we let that excuse stay there, we will stay exactly the same. Nothing will change. Does that make sense? And some of us really like the status quo. We don't want anything to change. Come on now. Some of you came into this room. Now, the rest of your locations, we didn't move up your seating and get all crazy with you. We should have. We should have. But we definitely did that at 48th Street. And everybody, I know there's a lot of you here that think you're season ticket holders. You know, you get out your ticket and you're like, hey, that's my seat right there. You want to get out? And then all of a sudden, all your seats get moved. And you're like, this is not right. This is not right. How can I worship God today? They have moved my seat. We are creatures of habit, aren't we? And when something threatens to take us out of our habits, that makes us uncomfortable. And when we feel like we're going to be uncomfortable, we create an excuse. Right? But it's on the other side of the excuse, if we can wreck that excuse, that God does great things. Excuses, listen, only rob us of the very things that God has in store for us. There's nothing different in your life after you use them. Have you ever had someone ask you to come to something because it's going to be really great, and they give you, oh, come on, you got to go, come on, you got to go, and you go, no. Not doing it. And you don't do it. And they come back and they are just blown up. It's like, this was the most awesome thing that ever happened in my life. It would have been, oh, this is crazy. And then you feel like, wow, I really blew that one. I really wish I could have kept that excuse in my pocket and just gone. I took my two sons and my son-in-law hunting pheasant yesterday. And that's a little scary for me because they're all going to have a lethal weapon in their hand and live ammunition. And so, you don't want anything bad to happen. And so I'm a little nervous, but I think this is really going to be fun. We're going to make a memory together. And we hadn't gone very far, and we have a guide, and we have dogs, and the dogs are doing what they're supposed to be doing, which is really neat. And my son Ben is about 20 yards on this side of me. And the other two boys are on this side, and we're walking, and dogs are working, and they missed a pheasant. And that pheasant came up right in between me and Ben. Okay, so it's like, oh no! No. And both of us were just fine, but we had the guns up, and we waited, and we missed. But anyway, But anyway, sometimes there's fears that keep us from having, I mean, the whole reason that we did that yesterday was we just want to make a memory. You know, oh, you remember that time? And it was so great. And we miss those things in those kinds of environments. Well, you know, the Bible teaches us that when Jesus walked into town, as he walked into town, there was a blind man who met him there, a guy named Bartimaeus, and begged Jesus to restore his sight. And Jesus restored his sight. Now, let me ask you a question. In a town like that, 2,000 years ago, how long would it take for news to travel that Bartimaeus got his sight back? It wouldn't take long to get to the other side of town, right? And so these other two blind guys hear about Bartimaeus, and they went, hey, we know if Jesus came into town that way, he's probably going out of town this way. Let's just hang out and wait for him. And when he comes, we'll just ask him, we'll beg him, we'll yell at him, and maybe we'll end up in the same situation that Bartimaeus ended up in, and that'll just be awesome, right? So they're going to meet Jesus on his way out of town. Now, for a moment, I want you to think about this. I want you to think about this Wreck the Roof initiative. I want you to think about all the new locations. That's going to be so awesome. I want you to think about all the new young leaders we're going to raise up. I want you to think about all the opportunities that are going to happen in our existing campuses. I want you to think about all the cool things that are going to happen at the camp. You know, when we had our very first meeting of Wreck the Roof is back in August. We were in a big circle. It was all the elders, wives, and staff, and families. And we were all in a big circle, a prayer circle, and they were saying, share something visionary that you want to see happen. And my son Ben said, I see my daughter, that would be my granddaughter, I see my daughter getting baptized at that camp someday. And all of a sudden this vision is in my head. And what I'm saying is this, you just don't know. You just have no idea what God has on the other side of what we're doing. If God is leading us to it, he obviously has some incredible things. I mean, you don't know what's going to happen in your life. You don't know what's going to happen in the life of your family, right? You don't know what's going to happen in your friends. You may have lifelong friends that you haven't even met yet because we haven't done this yet. And all of those things that'll be big surprises and wonderful things for you, God knows every one of them in advance. And you don't realize what you might be robbing yourself of when you put an excuse in the place of faith to step out where he wants you to be, right? So I got to ask you, what is the excuse in your life right now that needs to be wrecked inside of you? So we know what the roof was. We know what was wrecked. What was the moment of commitment? Well, in my mind, that was like a continual thing. I mean, it started out with the guys, they're following Jesus. I mean, they were committed just by waiting on Jesus. And then they were even more committed when they saw Jesus and followed him, and they were even more committed when they started yelling out to him, and they were even more committed when they followed him into the house. I'm seeing the excuses falling like leaves in the fall. That they're just not allowing any of those excuses to get in, right? And through all of that, they got nothing from Jesus. But each additional step that they made was an additional commitment so that they could get to that opportunity for Jesus to ask him the question, what do you want me to do for you? And when he did ask the question, they had the answer. We want to see. And then Jesus said, according to your faith. You see, faith was the absence of excuses. Right? According to your faith. He would have never been in the environment for Jesus to ask him the question and give them to give him the answer if any one of those excuses had taken root inside of their lives. And that's what I want us to do, to push away our limitations and our excuses when it comes to our commitment to him. And that's what this commitment card is all about. You know, this commitment card forces you to say, what's my excuse? And I can see God speak through that. What's coming in between you and me, son, daughter? What's the excuse that you're going to form? Because I have something I want to do in your life. You know, I believe that we have a God that has an inexhaustible supply to meet every need. Do you believe that? And I don't believe that God calls us to do things that he hasn't already supplied. And I believe he's supplied, totally supplied for this vision. He's done it in us and through us. And what we need to do is drop our excuses. So the fourth question we ask is, what action was taken? Well, he touched their eyes and they could see. They overcame the excuses and Jesus overcame the limitations. You need to grab that, right? Because you need to decide if the thing you are working in right now is a limitation or an excuse because of a limitation. Jesus is not going to manage your excuses. He's going to do the supernatural work of removing the limitation. You need to remove the excuse. If these examples in the New Testament are any example to us at all, we need to take that with us. You know, don't you want to transport yourself back and see what the expressions on these guys' faces were as soon as Jesus rubbed their eyes and they could see for the first time? I mean, wouldn't you want to see that? I want to challenge you with something. Every single week at the crossing, when you watch the video of people being baptized, you are seeing what it looks like when a person trusts in the Lord Jesus and puts their faith in Him. And it's like the blind seeing. It's like the limitation's been removed. All the excuses are gone. It's a truly, truly beautiful thing. Truth is, in our lives, we don't just have a few excuses. We have piled up excuses, right? We have all these piled up excuses. It creates years of excuses and then mountains of excuses. But I've seen Him move. I've seen Him move the mountains. And I believe He can do it again. So if you've got a mountain of excuses, maybe that's the mountain that Jesus needs to move in your life, right? In a little while, we're going to have an invitation time. We're going to have a decision time. And some of you are going, I can't go forward. There's no steps. They took my steps. Can't do it. I know the rest of you guys at other locations, you still have your steps. Fill it up. These guys, they're like, I don't know what you're doing. You move my cheese. I'm not going. I'm not doing it. There's even more room around here to get down on your knees and let Him move the mountains of excuses. And you'll be just fine. You'll be just fine. Number 5, what was the result? The result was they went out and told everybody. And that's the way it is with faith when it's real. That is the way it is with faith when it's real. You just can't keep it to yourself. Don't you think that Jesus knew they couldn't do it? I wonder the irony of it. Don't you tell anybody. I have an agenda here and I don't want you to mess it up. Like anybody can mess up Jesus' agenda. Remember, they never saw Jesus do anything until Jesus did what only He could do in their lives. Sometimes sight, to me, is really anti-faith. And real faith is something you just can't keep to yourself. You got to share it with everybody. I want you to be encouraged and strengthened by a story of faith and how that faith developed in the Buchanan family. They're a Macomb family, and they were willing to step out and share their testimony with you. So watch the video.
I'm Jason, this is my wife Tara, and we're the Buchanans. We are a family of 6. We're the proud parents of 3 girls and 1 son, and we've been attending the Macomb campus now for 8 years.
Before we came to the crossing, Jason and I lived a life that was very far from God. We were very caught up in the culture of the world. We pretty much lived life to please ourselves, and it led to a lot of mistakes and a broken marriage. Jason owned a coffee shop just down the street from the crossing, and actually quite a few of the members of that congregation were regular customers. But there was one couple in particular were very mature Christians, Mona and David Johnston. He first had a relationship with Mr. J, that's what we call him, and Miss Mona would eventually start coming around and start praying with Jason in the coffee shop.
Her prayers meant to me that I had a chance. Her prayers helped show me that God cared. Her prayers helped me to open a hardened heart. I spent most of my life thinking that nobody cared, so it was easy not to care. It was life-changing. I think God knew exactly what I needed, and He gave it to me. My heart was hardened. The world out here is what it is. She showed me what family was and what unconditional love meant. And she didn't take credit for that. She gave it all to Jesus. She gave it all to God. And that couple came from the crossing. That couple brought us to the crossing. If not for people like that, a person like me may not have a chance to have an intimate, personal relationship with Jesus Christ. It's about stepping out, and they did that with me. They took a chance on me, and to show me what God's love was about, and it stuck.
The crossing has been instrumental in our walk. I think that Jason and I have met so many amazing people that have just been available to us at the right time. And I really feel God working at the crossing.
For myself in my journey, I think the crossing was a come-as-you-are kind of church. They didn't put a judgment on me from my past. They took me in who I was today, and they were instrumental in what it took to have an intimate and personal relationship with Jesus Christ. I was a person on the outside. We were people on the outside. We didn't understand what that meant, and that's what's exciting, is that there will be more and more people who have an intimate personal relationship with Jesus. There will be more baptisms, there will be more change. That means a better community, a better neighborhood, and those are things that excite me. It's just neat to see the growth.
Casey. Incredible story. You know what what Jason said? He said, I have a hard heart. But it was the love of Jesus that came through another believer that broke right through it. And I don't care how hard your heart is, it is no match for the love of Jesus. And you and I need to understand that we have that kind of a message that is more powerful than any shell, than any barrier, than any stronghold, than any fortress that anybody can build. Jesus can still get through it when people see His love. I want you to think about that as we move to a time of decision.
The sermon is a hard one because we all know about excuses. Some of you watching right now may be watching because of an excuse. There were circumstances in your life that you allowed to get in the way of you going to a physical location today. One of the reasons why we have an online church is so that there can be no excuse for you to have an opportunity at an intimate, personal relationship with Jesus Christ right now. Whether you're sick, traveling, or just plain exhausted and didn't want to get up, there are no excuses for you right now to be just like the blind man. You've heard the message of Jesus. You know what He can do in your life. Now it's up to you to do something about it. Right now. Doesn't matter if you're still in your PJs or your work clothes, call out to Jesus and ask Him to make you see. You know the things in your life that need His healing hands. Let Him heal you. Cry out to Him. Doesn't matter if you're at Starbucks right now. He can change your life today. And then when He does, go and tell the world about what He's done. Let Him wreck the roof of your life and then rebuild a new roof that is so much better than anything that you could have ever imagined. If you need prayer, I'll be here in the prayer room to pray with you. But let's not let the excuses get in the way of what God can do in our lives right now. Let's go to Him.
even one like me. You carried sin and shame, the guilt of every man, the weight of all I've done, nailed into your hand. And oh, your love bled for me. And oh, your blood in crimson streams. And oh, your death is hell's defeat. A cross meant to kill is my victory. Oh, your amazing grace, I've seen and tasted it. It's running through my veins. I can't escape its grip. In you, my soul is safe. You cover everything. And oh, your love bled for me. And oh, your blood in crimson streams. And oh, your death is hell's defeat. A cross meant to kill is my victory. Behold the Lamb of God who takes away our sin, who takes away our sin. The Holy Lamb of God makes us alive again, makes us alive again. Behold the Lamb of God who takes away our sin, who takes away our sin. The Holy Lamb of God makes us alive again, makes us alive again. And oh, your love bled for me. And oh, your blood in crimson streams. And oh, your death is hell's defeat. A cross meant to kill is my victory. Oh, your love bled for me. And oh, your blood in crimson streams. And oh, your death is hell's defeat. A cross meant to kill is my victory. Oh, a cross meant to kill is my victory.
I'm broken before you. The waves are crashing in. My faith is shaking. I need your grace again. My tears are falling like a steady rain. My hope
Jesus could have had plenty of excuses not to go out the way that he did. He had plenty of legitimate excuses to not go through the pain, the suffering, and the humiliation that he did. But he chose to because he knew it was worth it. His sacrifice to save our souls was worth it. No excuses about it. So as we move to a time of communion, remember that sacrifice. Remember the choice that he made for you, and then spend some time thanking him. Let's go to him right now. Thank you so much for joining with us today. If you have any questions, you can get in touch with me by emailing joeyh@thecrossing.net for any questions or just to continue the conversation. Also, make sure to hit the give button at the top of the screen, or you can text The Crossing online to 77977 to give right from your phone. Thanks for coming, and I'll see you next week.